Hello, dear friend. Welcome back to the Sleeping Tones. Tonight we drift into the life of someone who seemed touched by something beyond the ordinary. Someone who heard melodies before he could write words. Who composed symphonies before other children learned to read. And who left behind a treasure of music that still fills concert halls more than 2 centuries after his death. Tonight, we explore the life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, the child prodigy who became the eternal genius, the boy who played for emperors and kings, and the man who died far too young, leaving a final masterpiece unfinished. So, settle into your pillows. Let the weight of the day dissolve, and allow yourself to be carried away by the story of this remarkable soul, this miracle child, this composer whose music still speaks in a language that needs no translation. It is a cold winter morning in the city of Salzburg, January 27th, 1756. Snow blankets the narrow medieval streets. Church bells mark the early hours, and in a modest apartment on the 3rd floor of number 9 Getreidegasse, in a building that still stands today, a child draws his first breath. His parents name him Johannes Chrysostomus Wolfgangus Theophilus. The first 2 names simply mark the feast day of Saint John Chrysostom. Wolfgangus honors his maternal grandfather, and Theophilus, meaning beloved of God, comes from his godfather, a merchant named Johannes Theophilus Pergmeyer. In time, the boy will prefer simpler versions of his name. He will sign letters as Wolfgang Amade or Wolfgang Amade, sometimes using the Latin form Amadeus. But never in his lifetime will he use that final form exclusively. That will come later, after his death, when the world remembers him as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The apartment is warm but simple. The rooms smell of wood smoke and candle wax. Downstairs, the building houses shops. Upstairs, the Mozart family makes their home in modest quarters. Comfortable, but not grand. The dwelling of a working musician who serves the Prince Archbishop of Salzburg. Leopold Mozart, the child's father, is 37 years old. He comes from a family of bookbinders and architects in Augsburg, a family of some standing that he left behind years ago to pursue music. He is a violinist of considerable skill. He serves as deputy Kapellmeister in the court orchestra of Archbishop Sigismund von Schrattenbach, and this very year, the year of Wolfgang's birth, he has published a violin method that will become famous throughout Europe, a treatise on the fundamental principles of violin playing that musicians will study for generations. Leopold is ambitious, educated, disciplined. He has a sharp mind and exacting standards. He believes in order, in method, in the cultivation of talent through rigorous training. And now, holding his newborn son, something stirs in him, a sense of possibility, a father's hope that perhaps this child, this 7th child born to him and his wife, might live longer than the others. Anna Maria Pertl Mozart. Wolfgang's mother is 36 years old. She comes from a middle-class family active in local administration. Her father was a skilled musician who died when she was young. She married Leopold on November 21st, 1747. They were called the handsomest couple in Salzburg. Anna Maria is practical where Leopold is theoretical, warm where he is demanding. She keeps the household running. She tends to the children. She navigates the daily challenges of life in a city where the Prince Archbishop holds absolute power, where musicians and artists live at the pleasure of their patron, where a secure position means everything. Of their 7 children, only 2 survive past infancy. The others, 5 small souls, slip away before their stories can properly begin. It is the nature of the time. Medicine is primitive. Infant mortality is common. Every family knows loss. But Wolfgang survives, and his older sister, Maria Anna, called Nannerl by everyone who knows her, survives as well. She is nearly 5 years older than Wolfgang. She is bright, musical, already showing promise at the keyboard. Leopold teaches Nannerl himself. He believes in starting early. Music is not merely an art. It is a language, a discipline, a path to understanding the divine order of creation. And so Nannerl sits at the clavier, practicing her scales, learning to read notes on the page, absorbing the fundamentals that Leopold drills into her with patient insistence. And Wolfgang, barely 3 years old, watches. He watches with eyes that seem to drink in everything. He stands beside the keyboard. He reaches up to touch the keys. And when Nannerl plays a melody, Wolfgang hums it back perfectly. Every note, every interval, every nuance, Leopold notices. How could he not? The child has not been taught. The child cannot read music. The child is barely old enough to speak in complete sentences. And yet, the child hears, remembers, reproduces. It is more than simple mimicry. It is understanding. When Leopold plays a chord at the keyboard, Wolfgang can identify it by ear. When Leopold teaches Nannerl about intervals, the distance between notes, Wolfgang absorbs the lesson without being addressed. He has what musicians call absolute pitch, the ability to name any note without reference. A rare gift. Perhaps one child in 10,000 possesses it naturally. By the time Wolfgang is 4 years old, he is playing small pieces at the keyboard. Leopold begins to write them down. Simple melodies, 8 bars, 12 bars, nothing complex, but composed by the child himself, not copied, not imitated, created. Leopold records these pieces in Nannerl's music book, the Nannerl Notenbuch, a collection of exercises and small works for his daughter's instruction. And in the margins he notes the dates, the ages, the circumstances. Wolfgang learned this piece when he was 4. Wolfgang composed this when he was 5. It is not boasting, it is documentation. Leopold understands that he is witnessing something extraordinary, something that must be recorded, something that the world will want to know about. And so the training begins in earnest, not harsh, not cruel, but thorough, methodical. Leopold teaches his son the way he teaches all his students: scales, arpeggios, sight reading, music theory, the rules of harmony, the structures of composition, the techniques of different instruments. Wolfgang absorbs it all with terrifying speed. What takes other students months to learn, Wolfgang masters in days. What requires years of practice, Wolfgang achieves in weeks. He plays not only keyboard but violin. He improvises at the instrument, creating melodies that seem to flow from his fingers without conscious thought. He can hear a piece of music once and play it back from memory. He can transpose a melody into different keys without hesitation. By the time Wolfgang is 6 years old, Leopold faces a decision. Does he keep this prodigy hidden in Salzburg, teaching him privately, preparing him for some distant future, or does he present the child to the world? Leopold chooses the latter. How could he not? This is his duty. God has given him a miracle child, and miracles are meant to be witnessed, to inspire, to glorify the Creator who bestows such gifts. In January of 1762, Just after Wolfgang's 6th birthday, Leopold takes both children to Munich. The Elector of Bavaria, Maximilian Joseph, holds court there. Leopold has connections, arrangements are made, and Wolfgang and Nannerl, dressed in their finest clothes, perform before the Bavarian court. The nobility watches. They whisper. They test the boy. They give him difficult pieces to sight read. They ask him to improvise on given themes. They cover the keyboard with a cloth so he must play without seeing the keys. They present him with musical puzzles, and Wolfgang, small for his age, barely reaching the keyboard when he sits, answers every challenge with ease. He plays, he smiles, he charms them with his naturalness, his lack of fear, his pure enjoyment of the music. The Elector is impressed. He rewards Leopold generously. Word begins to spread. The Mozart children, especially the boy, are something remarkable. A few months later, in September of 1762, Leopold takes the children to Vienna, the imperial capital, the grandest city in the German-speaking world. Here, Emperor Francis I and Empress Maria Theresa hold court at Schönbrunn Palace. Leopold secures an audience. The children perform. And the imperial family, along with their courtiers and guests, witness something they have never seen before. A 6-year-old boy playing with the confidence and musicality of a seasoned performer. A child who seems to live and breathe music. There are stories from this visit, perhaps embellished, perhaps not. The child Wolfgang slips on the polished floors of the palace. The young Archduchess Marie Antoinette, she is just 7 years old herself, helps him up, and Wolfgang, ever gallant even at 6, declares that when he grows up, he will marry her. The Empress calls him her little magician. She tests him. She has the keyboard covered. She asks him to play with one finger. She requests pieces in various styles, and Wolfgang, delighted by the challenge, performs with joy. The rewards are substantial: fine clothes, money, gifts, and most importantly, an endorsement. The Habsburg court approves of the Mozart children. This opens doors throughout Europe. Leopold sees the opportunity. His children can earn in a few months of touring what he makes in years of service in Salzburg. More than that, they can establish reputations, make connections, secure future positions. The world must see them while they are young, while their gifts are most remarkable. And so, in June of 1763, Leopold requests an extended leave from his position in Salzburg. The Archbishop grants it, and the Mozart family, Leopold, Anna Maria, Nannerl, and Wolfgang, set out on a grand tour of Europe that will last more than 3 years. They travel by carriage. The roads are rough. The journeys are long. They stay in inns and rented lodgings. They perform in palaces and concert halls, city after city, court after court. From Salzburg, they go first to Munich again, then to Augsburg, Leopold's hometown, where his family still lives. The welcome is cool. Leopold left under difficult circumstances, but the children perform. People marvel. The family moves on. They travel to Ludwigsburg, to Schwetzingen, to Heidelberg and Mannheim. At each stop, Leopold arranges concerts, sometimes private performances for nobility, sometimes public concerts for paying audiences. The children play. Wolfgang improvises. Nannerl accompanies. And everywhere, people are astonished. In Frankfurt, a young poet named Johann Wolfgang Goethe, he is 14 years old, attends a concert and never forgets it. Years later, he will write about the experience, about seeing this small child perform with such mastery. They reach Paris in November of 1763. Paris, the cultural capital of Europe, the city of Enlightenment philosophy and artistic sophistication. Here, the Mozarts must succeed. Paris can make or break reputations. Leopold works his connections. Letters of introduction, recommendations from German courts. Slowly, doors open. They perform for Madame de Pompadour, the influential mistress of King Louis XV. Wolfgang plays at Versailles for the royal family. They give public concerts at aristocratic homes. Paris receives them well. The French nobility find the children charming. Wolfgang, in particular, captivates them. He is more than merely talented. He is engaging, confident without arrogance, natural, and his playing, his ability to improvise, to take a simple theme and develop it into elaborate variations, suggests not just technical skill, but genuine musical intelligence. They remain in Paris through the winter. Wolfgang is 7 years old. He is composing now, not just small pieces, but substantial works, sonatas for keyboard and violin. His first published works appear in Paris, dedicated to Madame Victoire, one of the king's daughters. In April of 1764, the family crosses the English Channel. England, London. Here, they will spend 15 months, the longest stay anywhere on the tour. London in 1764 is a vibrant city. Handel died here just 5 years ago. The Italian opera flourishes. Concert life is rich. And the reigning monarch, King George III, is a genuine lover of music. His wife, Queen Charlotte, plays keyboard herself. The Mozarts perform at court on April 27. The king and queen are genuinely delighted. They test Wolfgang. They ask him to sight read pieces by Handel. They request improvisations on bass lines. They watch him play with others in ensemble, and they recognize this is not mere training. This is innate musicality, something that cannot be taught. But the most important meeting in London happens not at court, but in the home of Johann Christian Bach. Johann Christian is the youngest son of the great Johann Sebastian Bach. He is 30 years old. He has lived in London for several years. He is opera composer to the King's Theatre. He is admired for his elegant melodies, his graceful style, his ability to write music that is both sophisticated and accessible. And Johann Christian, perhaps seeing something of his own father's genius in this child, takes an interest in Wolfgang. They meet, they play together, 4 hands at one keyboard, the man and the child, trading melodies, improvising together. Johann Christian shares his knowledge, shows Wolfgang his scores, explains how he structures his symphonies, how he writes for different instruments. These sessions profoundly influence Wolfgang. Years later, he will remember Johann Christian Bach with deep affection. He will arrange some of Johann Christian's piano sonatas as keyboard concertos. He will adopt elements of Johann Christian's style, the singing melodic lines, the elegant phrasing, the clarity of form. In London, Wolfgang composes his first symphonies, 3 works, K16, K19, and K19A, written when he is 8 years old. They are brief, simple, written for small orchestra, but they are symphonies nonetheless, multi-movement works, properly structured, orchestrated for strings and winds. Leopold arranges public concerts. He rents halls. He advertises in newspapers. The family needs income. The expenses of travel are considerable. And while the aristocracy reward them generously when they perform at private functions, these rewards are unpredictable. The English are curious but cautious. Some people wonder if this is real. Perhaps the child is actually a dwarf. Perhaps he is older than claimed. Perhaps his father is somehow secretly helping him. Skepticism is natural. What Wolfgang does seems impossible for a child. To address this, Leopold allows scientists and musicians to examine Wolfgang. A prominent lawyer and naturalist named Daines Barrington tests the boy extensively. He asks Wolfgang to improvise in various styles, to sight-read difficult compositions, to compose on the spot, and Barrington writes a detailed report for the Royal Society, documenting the child's abilities, verifying that this is genuine, no trickery, no deception, simply extraordinary natural ability combined with excellent training. From London, the family travels through the Netherlands, The Hague, Amsterdam, Utrecht. Everywhere, the pattern repeats. Performances, rewards, astonishment. The children fall ill several times. The constant travel, the changes in climate and food, the stress of performing. Both Wolfgang and Nannerl suffer fevers and infections, but they recover and continue. They pass through Paris again, then Dijon, Lyon, Geneva, Lausanne, Zurich, through southern Germany, Munich once more, and finally, in November of 1766, after 3.5 years on the road, they return to Salzburg. Wolfgang is 10 years old. He has performed for emperors and kings. He has published music in Paris and London. He has met the leading composers of Europe. He has absorbed an extraordinary range of musical styles: French elegance, Italian drama, German solidity, English grace. And now he comes home, to the modest apartment on Getreidegasse, to the city where his father serves the archbishop, to lessons and routine and the daily work of developing his gift into something that will last. The touring years have changed Wolfgang. He has seen the world. He knows his abilities. He understands that he is unusual, but he also knows the reality of a musician's life. You serve patrons. You depend on their favor. Your art is your commodity. And the world is full of talented people competing for limited positions. Leopold resumes Wolfgang's training with renewed intensity: theory, counterpoint, composition. The boy must master not just performance but the complete craft of music. He must learn to write for orchestra, for voices, for every instrumental combination. He must understand the rules that govern harmony and form. Only then can he transcend them. In September of 1767, just a year after returning from the Grand Tour, Leopold takes the family to Vienna again. The city has changed. The old Emperor Francis has died. His son Joseph II now rules alongside his mother, the Empress Maria Theresa, and smallpox is sweeping through Vienna. Both children fall desperately ill. First Nannerl, then Wolfgang. The disease takes them to the edge of death. They survive. But Wolfgang's face bears the marks, small pox scars that will remain visible for the rest of his life, a permanent reminder of how fragile life can be. Despite the illness, Wolfgang receives a commission, an opera, Bastien und Bastienne, a simple Singspiel, a German language work with spoken dialogue and musical numbers. It is a short piece, a pastoral entertainment, but it is Wolfgang's first theatrical work. He is 12 years old. Soon after comes a more substantial commission, La Finta Semplice, an Italian opera buffa, a full-length work in 3 acts. Wolfgang composes it, but it is never performed. Palace intrigue, jealousy from older composers, skepticism about whether a child could have written such music. The production is canceled. It is Wolfgang's first real professional disappointment. But another opportunity comes. A solemn mass is needed for the dedication of the orphanage church in Vienna. Wolfgang composes it. The performance takes place on December 7th, 1768. It succeeds. The 12-year-old has written sacred music that can stand alongside works by experienced composers. The family returns to Salzburg, and now Leopold plans the next phase of Wolfgang's education: Italy, the land of opera, the birthplace of the modern musical style, the country where every ambitious composer must study and succeed. In December of 1769, Wolfgang is nearly 14. Leopold takes his son southward. They leave Anna Maria and Nannerl behind. This journey is for Wolfgang alone. They travel through Innsbruck and Verona. In Verona, Wolfgang gives a concert that is wildly successful. The local newspaper describes him as a prodigy without equal. They move on to Milan. Here, Wolfgang meets the great opera composer Giovanni Battista Sammartini. They attend performances at La Scala. Wolfgang absorbs the Italian style, the bel canto singing, the dramatic pacing, the orchestral colors. In Bologna, they meet Padre Giovanni Battista Martini, the most famous music teacher in Italy, a strict contrapuntist, a scholar of ancient church music. Padre Martini examines Wolfgang's work. He finds it impressive. He gives the boy advanced lessons in counterpoint and fugue. Wolfgang learns quickly, always quickly. In Rome, they arrive during Holy Week of 1770. They attend services at the Sistine Chapel. Here, one of the most closely guarded secrets in Catholic music is performed: the Miserere by Gregorio Allegri, a setting of Psalm 51 for 9 voices. The Vatican forbids copies of this music. It is performed only in the Sistine Chapel during Holy Week. Its harmonies are considered sacred mysteries. Wolfgang hears it once, returns to their lodgings, and writes it down from memory. The entire piece, every voice, every note, the story spreads through Rome like wildfire. The child who could steal the papal secret with his ears alone. Rather than condemn him, the Pope honors him. Wolfgang is made a Knight of the Golden Spur, a papal decoration. He is the youngest person ever to receive it. From then on, he could sign his name as Cavalier Mozart. He rarely does, but the honor establishes him. The Vatican itself has recognized his genius. In Milan again, Wolfgang receives his most important commission yet: an opera seria, Mithridate, Re di Ponto, a serious opera on a classical subject, for the primary opera house of Milan, with the best singers in Italy. Wolfgang is 14 years old. He composes the entire opera, 23 arias, choruses, recitatives, the full orchestral score. He works with the singers, adjusts the music to suit their voices, makes changes when they request them. This is the professional world. You collaborate, you accommodate, you serve the needs of the production. The premiere takes place on December 26th, 1770. It is a triumph. The audience calls for encores. The opera runs for 22 consecutive performances, an extraordinary success. The child composer has proven himself in the most demanding venue in Europe. Wolfgang returns to Italy 2 more times, in 1771 and 1772. More commissions, more performances, more honors. In Bologna, the Accademia Philharmonica makes him a member. The rules require candidates to be at least 20 years old. They make an exception for the 14-year-old Wolfgang. But between these journeys, reality intrudes. Back in Salzburg, life is less glamorous. Wolfgang serves as Concertmeister in the Archbishop's court. The position pays very little. The work is routine, composing on demand, performing at ceremonies, training choir boys. It is necessary, it is respectable, but it is limiting. In 1772, a new archbishop takes power in Salzburg, Hieronymus von Colloredo. He is younger than his predecessor, educated, influenced by Enlightenment ideas, but he is also rigid, demanding, unsympathetic to artists who think too highly of themselves. Leopold understands the situation. Wolfgang needs to find a better position, somewhere that will pay well, somewhere that will give him artistic freedom, somewhere worthy of his abilities. They try. Letters are written. Applications are made. Wolfgang travels to Munich, to Vienna, to Mannheim, looking for appointments, for permanent positions, for courts that will take him as their composer. But no position comes, not yet. The years pass. Wolfgang is in his late teens now, no longer a miracle child, simply a very talented young composer among many talented composers. Europe is full of musicians seeking employment, and Wolfgang, for all his gifts, has no powerful patrons pushing for him, no political connections, no family fortune to support him while he waits. So he serves in Salzburg and composes symphonies, concertos, serenades, masses, divertimentos. The music flows from him constantly. Some of it is routine, work, pieces written to order for specific occasions, but some of it shows his developing mastery. The violin concertos he writes in 1775, the serenades and divertimentos, the early piano sonatas. He is maturing, finding his voice, learning what works and what doesn't, building the technical foundation that will support his greatest works. But he is also restless, frustrated. Salzburg feels small. The archbishop treats musicians as servants. Wolfgang wants more. He wants to compose opera. He wants to work in cities where music matters. Vienna, Munich, Mannheim, Paris, anywhere but here. In September of 1777, Wolfgang is 21 years old. He and his mother leave Salzburg. Leopold must remain behind to keep his position, but Anna Maria can accompany Wolfgang as he searches for employment. Leopold stays with Nannerl in Salzburg. Mother and son travel westward. They go first to Munich. Wolfgang hopes the Elector of Bavaria might offer him a position. They meet, they talk. The Elector is polite but non-committal. Perhaps later, perhaps if something opens. Come back in a year or two. Disappointment. But Wolfgang presses on. They travel to Augsburg, Leopold's hometown. Here Wolfgang gives concerts. He meets relatives he barely knows. He plays the organ at the Church of the Holy Cross. He performs for the local aristocracy. And he falls briefly under the spell of his cousin Maria Anna Thekla Mozart. She is 19, clever, irreverent. She and Wolfgang write silly letters to each other full of crude jokes and wordplay. It is a brief flirtation, nothing serious, but it shows Wolfgang's need for lightness, for someone who understands his humor, his sometimes childish love of absurdity. They move on to Mannheim, the city where the Electoral Palatine keeps one of the finest orchestras in Europe. The Mannheim Orchestra is famous for its discipline, its precision, its innovative techniques. The composers here are developing new approaches to orchestration, to dynamics, to symphonic structure. Wolfgang loves it. He makes friends. He studies the orchestra's methods. He composes. He teaches. He gives lessons to earn money. The expenses of travel are draining the family's resources. They need income. Wolfgang takes on students, performs at private gatherings, writes music on commission, and he falls in love, hopelessly, desperately, with Aloysia Weber, The Weber family lives in Mannheim. The father, Friedhelm Weber, is a bass singer and music copyist, not wealthy, not prominent, but cultured, musical. He has 4 daughters, and the second daughter, Aloysia, is a singer of extraordinary promise. She is 16 years old, beautiful, talented. Her voice is pure and powerful. She can sing the most demanding coloratura passages with ease. She has ambitions of becoming a prima donna, of singing in the great opera houses of Europe. Wolfgang is smitten. He hears her sing and decides immediately that he must help her career. He will write arias for her, teach her, travel with her. Together they will conquer Europe. He imagines a future where they perform together, where his compositions showcase her voice, where they are partners in art and life. He writes to his father about these plans. Leopold is horrified. Wolfgang is supposed to be finding a position, finding security. Instead, he is falling in love with a penniless girl, chasing fantasies, wasting time and money. Leopold writes back sharply, "Your whole intention is to ruin me, to build castles in the air." Wolfgang protests, but Leopold is firm. "You will leave Mannheim. You will go to Paris. You will stop this nonsense." Anna Maria, caught in the middle, tries to keep peace between father and son. Wolfgang obeys reluctantly. He composes more arias for Aloysia. He imagines that perhaps, someday, things will be different. But for now, he must go to Paris, as Leopold commands. In March of 1778, Wolfgang and Anna Maria arrive in Paris. It is 4 years since the triumphant childhood visit. Wolfgang is no longer a prodigy. He is simply another composer seeking work in a city overflowing with musical talent. Paris is difficult. Wolfgang has some connections from the earlier visit. But times have changed. The French are enthusiastic about their own composers now. Italian opera is popular, and Wolfgang, for all his skill, is German, an outsider. He composes a symphony, the Paris Symphony, K. 297, concertos for flute and harp, chamber music, ballet music, Le Petit Rien for the opera. The works are well received, but no permanent position is offered. No major commission comes, and the expenses mount. Wolfgang gives lessons, but there are never enough students, never enough income. He and his mother are staying in a cheap apartment. The accommodations are poor. Anna Maria grows ill. The summer heat of Paris is oppressive. Anna Maria develops a fever, then chills, then delirium. Wolfgang tries to get help. Doctors come. They bleed her, apply poultices, prescribe medicines. Nothing works. On July 3, 1778, Anna Maria Mozart dies. She is 57 years old. Wolfgang sits with her body. He is 22. He has never felt more alone. He must write to his father, must tell Leopold that Anna Maria is gone. The letter is careful, measured. Wolfgang tries to soften the blow, suggests Leopold prepare himself, then confirms the death. Leopold is devastated. He blames Wolfgang. If they had stayed in Salzburg, if Wolfgang had not insisted on this journey, if Wolfgang remains in Paris a few more months, grieving, working, but his heart is not in it. He wants to leave, to go home, but also he wants to pass through Mannheim again, to see Aloysia. When he finally does, in December of 1778, he discovers that the Weber family has moved to Vienna, and Aloysia, his Aloysia, has lost interest in him. She is pursuing her own career now. She is friendly but distant. The romantic dream is over. Wolfgang returns to Salzburg in January of 1779. He is defeated. His mother is dead. No position has been found. His romantic hopes have been crushed, and now he must return to the service of Archbishop Colorado. The archbishop, perhaps taking pity on him, offers a better position, court organist, with an actual salary, 800 florins a year. Wolfgang accepts. What choice does he have? He will serve in Salzburg for 2 more years, composing masses and symphonies and concertos, writing music for the court, for the church, for the endless ceremonies and occasions that require music. But he is watching for opportunities, waiting. And in January of 1781, that opportunity comes. A commission to compose an opera for Munich, Idomeneo, an opera seria on a classical subject, a major work for a major theater. Wolfgang goes to Munich. He composes feverishly, works with the singers, shapes the music to suit the drama. The premiere takes place on January 29, 1781. It succeeds. The opera is powerful, dramatic, full of orchestral color and vocal beauty. Mozart has proven himself again, not as a child prodigy, but as a mature composer, someone who can write serious dramatic music, someone who belongs in the first rank. And then, 2 months later, everything changes. Archbishop Colorado summons his musicians to Vienna. Emperor Joseph II is being crowned. There are celebrations. The archbishop wants his full entourage present, including Mozart. In Vienna, Mozart is treated as a servant. He must eat with the valets. He is forbidden from performing at private concerts where he could earn money. He is kept like a lackey, expected to wait on the archbishop's convenience. Given no respect, no consideration, Mozart is furious. He has composed operas that were acclaimed in Munich. He has performed for the greatest courts in Europe. And now he is treated like a footman. It is unbearable. In May of 1781, Mozart confronts the archbishop, asks to be released from service. The archbishop refuses. They argue. The encounter becomes heated. The archbishop's steward, Count Arco, literally kicks Mozart out of the room. Mozart is dismissed, ejected from service, and suddenly, he is free. He decides instantly he will not return to Salzburg. He will stay in Vienna as a freelance composer and performer. It is risky. It is uncertain. But it is also exactly what he has always wanted. Freedom to compose what he chooses, to perform where he wishes, to live as an independent artist. Leopold is beside himself with worry. How will Wolfgang survive? What will he do for money? This is madness. But Wolfgang is determined. He is 25 years old, and he is done being anyone's servant. Vienna in 1781 is the center of musical Europe. Emperor Joseph II is a reformer, educated, cultured, interested in opera and chamber music. The aristocracy maintains private orchestras. They host concerts in their palaces. They compete for the best musicians. It is a city where talent can flourish. If you can make the right connections, if you can navigate the politics, if you can keep the money flowing, the city pulses with music. Every evening brings concerts, private salons where nobles gather to hear the latest compositions, public theaters staging Italian operas, churches where sacred music fills the vaulted spaces, coffee houses where musicians meet and argue about aesthetics, instrument makers and music publishers and copyists all doing brisk business. For a composer of ambition, there is no better place to be. But Vienna is also expensive. Rent devours money. Food costs more than in provincial cities. Proper clothes for attending aristocratic gatherings do not come cheap. A freelance musician must constantly hustle. teaching wealthy students who show little talent, performing at private concerts for inconsistent fees, composing on commission when commissions can be found, publishing works when publishers can be convinced to take the risk. Mozart needs lodgings. A friend connects him with a family he knows, the Weber family. They have moved to Vienna after the father's death. The mother, Cecilia Weber, rents rooms to supplement her income, and she has space available. Mozart moves in, and there, in the Weber household, is Aloysia, now married to an actor and painter named Joseph Lang. Still beautiful, still talented. Lang is actually painting Mozart's portrait, an unfinished work that will become one of the most famous images of the composer. But Aloysia herself is no longer the center of Mozart's romantic imagination. That infatuation has faded. She is simply his friend's wife now, a talented colleague, nothing more. Instead, his attention turns to Constanze, Aloysia's younger sister. She is 19 years old, not as beautiful as Aloysia, perhaps, not as accomplished as a singer, but warm, down to earth, patient. She has common sense. She can manage a household. She laughs at Mozart's jokes. She does not take offense at his mood swings or his occasional childish behavior. She understands that creative people are different. That genius does not always come packaged with social graces. Constanze has a good musical ear. She loves music. She can sing adequately, though not professionally. She appreciates Bach and Handel, the old masters of counterpoint. This pleases Mozart. He has been studying Baroque music recently, rediscovering the elaborate fugues and canons that composers wrote before the classical style emerged. Mozart begins courting her, Cecilia Weber. Protective of her daughter after what happened with Aloysia's romance, watches closely. There are rumors, gossip. People whisper that Mozart is living with the Webers, that perhaps improprieties are occurring, that Constanze's reputation is being damaged. Mozart moves out to scotch the scandal. He takes rooms elsewhere, but he continues seeing Constanze, calling on her properly, walking with her in public, making his intentions clear. Leopold disapproves from afar. Not another Weber girl, not from that family. Have you learned nothing from the Aloysia debacle? You need to find a position first, security. Then think about marriage. Wolfgang protests in his letters. He is in love. Constanze is perfect for him. She is exactly what he needs. But Leopold refuses to give his blessing. He writes sharp letters, accusations, warnings. You are throwing your life away. You're being manipulated by that family. They see you as a meal ticket. The tension builds through the spring and summer of 1782. Mozart knows he needs his father's permission, not legally. He is 26 years old, but emotionally. Leopold's approval matters, always has, always will. But Mozart also knows he cannot wait forever. He and Constanze want to be together, to build a life, to stop sneaking around like guilty children. And meanwhile, Mozart is working, composing. An opera is needed for the Burg Theater. Emperor Joseph wants German opera performed, not Italian. The court composer, Antonio Salieri, is Italian. This is an opportunity for German composers to make their mark. Mozart receives a libretto, The Abduction from the Seraglio, a German singspiel, a comedy about a Spanish nobleman who rescues his betrothed from a Turkish pasha. There are exotic elements, Turkish music, comedy, romantic drama. Mozart composes it rapidly. The music is brilliant, full of color, the Turkish style with its percussion and unusual harmonies, arias that showcase the singers, ensembles that build dramatic tension. and a depth of musical thought that far exceeds the conventional expectations for Singspiel. The premiere takes place on July 16, 1782. Emperor Joseph attends. There is a famous story, perhaps apocryphal, that after the performance the emperor remarked, "Too many notes, my dear Mozart," and Mozart supposedly replied, "Just as many as necessary, Your Majesty." Whether the exchange happened or not, the sentiment captures something true. Mozart's music is rich, complex, full of detail. Some people find it overwhelming, too much happening, too many ideas competing for attention, but others recognize its brilliance. The abduction becomes hugely successful. It is performed throughout German-speaking Europe. Mozart's reputation soars. He is no longer just a talented composer. He is the composer of the moment, the man who wrote the opera that everyone is talking about. And on August 4th, 1782, less than 3 weeks after the premiere, Mozart and Constanze Weber are married in St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. Leopold's grudging permission arrives the day after the wedding. But Mozart does not care. He is married. He is successful. He is living in Vienna as an independent artist. Life is full of possibility. The marriage is happy, despite the challenges that will come, despite the financial troubles, despite the infant deaths they will endure. Mozart and Constanze are devoted to each other. He calls her his little wife in letters. She manages their chaotic household with patience. They argue sometimes, but they always reconcile. There is genuine affection between them, genuine partnership. Over the next 9 years, they will have 6 children. 4 will die in infancy. Only 2 will survive to adulthood. Carl Thomas, born in 1784, will live to be 74. Franz Xaver Wolfgang, born in 1791, just months before Mozart's death, will become a musician and composer like his father and will live to be 53. The deaths of the infant children are heartbreaking. Each time Mozart and Constanze grieve. But this is the reality of the 18th century. Many families lose children. You love them while you can, and you trust in God's purposes. In Vienna during the early 1780s, Mozart is productive and successful. He gives concerts, performs as a pianist. He is acknowledged as the finest keyboard player in Vienna. His improvisations are legendary. He can take a simple theme and spin out elaborate variations, can shift keys and moods seamlessly, can combine technical brilliance with genuine musical expression. He composes piano concertos. This is his primary vehicle for public performance. Between 1782 and 1786, he writes 15 piano concertos, works of astonishing variety and sophistication. Each one is different. Each one explores new expressive territory. Some are playful and brilliant. Some are introspective and melancholy. Some are heroic and dramatic. The concertos bring Mozart income. He performs them at subscription concerts. Wealthy patrons pay in advance for a series of performances. Mozart plays his new concertos. The audience applauds. Everyone is satisfied. It is a sustainable model while it lasts. And then, sometime around 1783 or 1784, Mozart meets Joseph Haydn. Joseph Haydn is 24 years older than Mozart. He is already famous throughout Europe. He has spent most of his career in the service of Prince Nikolaus Esterházy, composing symphonies and operas and chamber music for the prince's entertainment. He is known as the father of the symphony, the father of the string quartet, a composer of immense skill and influence. The two men probably meet at a concert in Vienna, perhaps at the Tonkünstler Societät, a charitable organization for musicians, where both have works performed. They begin talking, discovering mutual respect. They start meeting regularly, playing music together, often in informal string quartet sessions at the home of one patron or another. Haydn plays first violin, Mozart plays viola. Two other musicians join them, and they read through quartets, Mozart's, Haydn's, works by other composers. It is music making for the pure pleasure of it. No audience, no performance pressure. Just four skilled musicians exploring the literature. The friendship deepens quickly. Despite the age difference, despite their different circumstances, they recognize something in each other. A shared commitment to excellence, a refusal to accept easy solutions, a belief that music can and should be profound as well as entertaining. In German culture, there are formal and informal forms of address. Sie for acquaintances and superiors, du for intimate friends and family. Haydn and Mozart use du with each other. This is unusual given their age difference, but it signals the depth of their friendship. They are equals in music, brothers in art. Mozart begins working on a set of 6-string quartets. He intends them as a tribute to Haydn. Inspired by Haydn's revolutionary Opus 33 quartets from 1781, Mozart is pushing himself to write quartets that meet Haydn's standard, that explore the possibilities of 4 equal voices in conversation. The work is difficult. Mozart usually composes quickly, but these quartets take years. He starts them in 1782, does not complete them until early 1785. The manuscripts show his struggle, crossed out passages, revised sections. He is working harder on these pieces than on almost anything else he has written. When he finally finishes them, he publishes them with a dedication to Haydn. Written in Italian, formal yet heartfelt. To my dear friend, Haydn. A father, having resolved to send his children out into the great world, finds it advisable to entrust them to the protection and guidance of a highly celebrated man who, fortunately, is also his best friend. Here then, celebrated man and dearest friend, are my 6 children. They are, it is true, the fruit of long and laborious endeavor, yet the hope inspired in me by several of my friends that this endeavor might in some degree be rewarded encourages me. Please, then, receive them kindly, and be to them a father, guide, and friend. It is one of the most beautiful dedications in all of music, a public acknowledgement of friendship, a tribute from one master to another. Haydn responds with equal warmth. When Leopold Mozart visits Vienna in 1785, Haydn tells him directly, "I tell you before God, and as an honest man, your son is the greatest composer known to me by person and repute. He has taste, and what is more, the greatest skill in composition." Leopold is moved to tears. His son, the miracle child, has been recognized by the greatest living composer, the validation he has always sought, the confirmation that Wolfgang's genius is real, that it will endure. The friendship between Mozart and Haydn will last until Mozart's death. They continue to meet when Haydn is in Vienna. They attend each other's concerts. They study each other's works. Each influences the other. Mozart's melodic gifts inspire Haydn's later works. Haydn's structural mastery influences Mozart's treatment of form. It is a friendship without jealousy, without competition. Two great composers who recognize each other's worth, who encourage rather than undermine, who celebrate rather than envy. In a world where musicians often compete viciously for limited positions, where rivals plot against each other, where professional jealousy is assumed, the Mozart-Haydn friendship stands as something rare and beautiful. In 1786, Mozart composes his opera The Marriage of Figaro, a collaboration with the Italian poet Lorenzo da Ponte. Da Ponte writes the libretto, adapting it from a controversial French play by Beaumarchais. The play was initially banned in Vienna for its revolutionary themes, but Da Ponte softens the political content just enough to satisfy the censors, and Mozart composes music that is both entertaining and deeply human. Figaro is an opera buffa, a comic opera, but it is comedy with layers. The characters are not caricatures but complex human beings. The Countess mourns her husband's infidelities with genuine pain. Figaro's anger at being manipulated is real. Even the Count, the villain of the piece, has moments of humanity. The music is extraordinary. Ensembles where multiple characters sing simultaneously, each with their own perspective, each with their own emotional truth, and yet all blending into a coherent whole. Arias that reveal character, recitatives that move the plot forward with grace and wit. The premiere takes place on May 1st, 1786, at the Berg Theatre. The response is enthusiastic but not overwhelming. Vienna appreciates it, but the opera finds its true home in Prague. When it is performed there a few months later, Prague goes wild for it. Every performance is packed. People sing the tunes in the streets. Mozart becomes Prague's favorite composer, and this leads to another commission. Prague wants a new opera from Mozart for their national theater. He and Da Ponte collaborate again, this time on Don Giovanni, the story of the legendary seducer, the man who conquers women and defies moral law until a supernatural avenger. The statue of a man Don Giovanni has killed drags him to hell. Don Giovanni is darker than Figaro. It mixes comedy and tragedy, seduction and damnation, farce and horror. The music captures all of it. The famous Champagne aria, where Don Giovanni celebrates his dissolute lifestyle. The catalog aria, where his servant Leporello lists all his master's conquests. The terrifying finale, where the statue comes to dinner and the earth opens to swallow Don Giovanni. The premiere takes place in Prague on October the 29th, 1787. It is a triumph. Prague loves it. Vienna, when it is performed there a few months later, is more reserved. Some people find it disturbing, too dark, too strange. But Mozart does not care. He has written what he intended, an opera that refuses to be easily categorized, that challenges its audience. The year 1787 also brings sorrow. Leopold Mozart dies on May 28th. He is 67 years old. Mozart receives the news in Vienna. He does not return to Salzburg for the funeral. His relationship with his father has been complicated, loving but fraught with tension. Leopold controlled so much of Wolfgang's early life, pushed so hard, demanded so much, and Wolfgang both appreciated it and resented it. Now Leopold is gone, and Mozart is truly on his own. No father watching over him, no father to approve or disapprove. Just Mozart, his wife, his children, and his music. In November of 1787, Emperor Joseph II appoints Mozart to a court position, composer to the imperial chamber. It comes with a salary, 800 florins a year, not enormous, but steady. The position requires very little. Mozart must compose some dance music for the court balls. That is essentially it. He is free to pursue other work, other commissions. This is exactly the kind of sinecure that Mozart has always sought, income without excessive obligation. The year 1788-88 is one of extraordinary creativity. In the space of about 6 weeks during the summer, Mozart composes his final 3 symphonies, No. 39 in E-flat major, No. 40 in G minor, No. 41 in C major. Later nicknamed the Jupiter Symphony, though Mozart himself never called it that. 3 symphonies, in 6 weeks, each one completely different, each one a masterpiece. The E-flat Symphony is warm and gracious. The G minor is passionate and urgent, one of only 2 symphonies Mozart wrote in a minor key. The Jupiter is grand and celebratory, ending with a fugue of stunning complexity that combines 5 different themes simultaneously. We do not know why Mozart composed these symphonies. No commission is recorded. No performance seems to have been scheduled. Perhaps he intended them for a concert series that never materialized. Perhaps he simply felt compelled to write them. Perhaps he heard them in his mind and needed to set them down. But their existence testifies to something remarkable. Even in the midst of financial stress, Mozart is always struggling with money, even in the midst of family worries. Constanze is often ill. Even in the midst of daily anxieties about survival, Mozart composes music of transcendent beauty, music that seems untouched by circumstance, music that exists in its own realm of perfection. In 1790, Mozart and Da Ponte collaborate for the 3rd and final time, Così fan tutte. All Women Are Like That. A strange title, a strange opera. 2 men make a bet with their cynical friend. They will test their fiancé's fidelity. They will pretend to go to war, then return in disguise and try to seduce each other's beloved. And the women, after some resistance, succumb. It is a cruel experiment, a dark comedy about human frailty, about the impossibility of absolute faithfulness, about the gap between our ideals and our reality. The music is beautiful, some of Mozart's most exquisite melodies. But the emotional tone is ambiguous. By the end, no one seems happy. The couples are reunited. But the damage has been done. Trust is broken. Così premieres on January 26, 1790. The response is muted. People are not sure what to make of it. Is it cynical, misogynistic, or is it a compassionate exploration of human weakness? The debate will continue for centuries. The year 1791 begins with financial anxiety, but also with hope. Mozart's situation is gradually improving. The debts that have accumulated over years of overspending and mismanagement are being addressed. Wealthy patrons in Hungary and Amsterdam have pledged annuities in return for occasional compositions. Publishers are beginning to pay proper fees for his works. There are even discussions about a possible position. Assistant to the Kapellmeister at St. Stephen's Cathedral. It would be unpaid at first. But when the current Kapellmeister dies or retires, Mozart would inherit a salaried position worth 2,000 florins annually. The future looks more secure than it has in years. Constanze's health improves. She travels to Baden, a spa town near Vienna, for therapeutic baths. Mozart visits her frequently. Their letters show affection and playfulness. And then, in mid-July, a mysterious visitor arrives. A man dressed in gray. He will not give his name. He has a commission, a Requiem Mass, for an anonymous patron. The fee is substantial, 50 ducats up front, 50 more upon completion. The stranger makes one condition. Mozart must tell no one about the commission. Mozart accepts. He needs the money. and he has composed sacred music before. This will simply be another mass for the dead. He can complete it quickly. The stranger provides the initial payment and leaves. We know now that the stranger was Franz Anton Leitgeb, steward to Count Franz von Walsegg. The Count's young wife has died. The Count, an amateur musician, plans to pass off the Requiem as his own composition, a memorial tribute to his beloved wife. This was not unusual at the time. Wealthy amateurs often purchase works from professional composers and claim them as their own. But Mozart does not know this, and as the summer progresses, as he works on other commissions, the mysterious Requiem lingers in the back of his mind. Who commissioned it? Why the secrecy? And why? As the weeks pass, does he begin to feel increasingly unwell? In August, Mozart travels to Prague. He has been commissioned to compose an opera for the coronation of Leopold II as King of Bohemia, La Clemenza di Tito, the Clemency of Titus, an opera seria in the old style, a serious opera about a Roman emperor who forgives those who plot against him, a paean to enlighten monarchy, to mercy over vengeance. Mozart composes it quickly, in less than a month. It is professional work, accomplished, but perhaps not deeply felt. He is distracted, worried about the Requiem, worried about money, worried about his health. The premiere takes place on September 6, 1791. Empress Maria Louisa attends. She is reportedly unimpressed. German rubbish, she calls it. The opera does not become popular immediately. Only later will it be recognized as another Mozart masterpiece. Mozart returns to Vienna, and now he turns his attention to his final opera, the one that will become his most beloved in German-speaking countries, Die Zauberflöte, the Magic Flute. Emanuel Schikaneder, a theater director and fellow Freemason, has written the libretto. It is a fantastical story. A prince rescues a princess from an evil sorcerer, except the sorcerer is not actually evil, and the rescuer is not actually heroic, and everything is more complicated than it seems. There are moral lessons, Masonic symbolism, magic, and transformation. Mozart composes music that ranges from the sublimely beautiful to the delightfully silly. The Queen of the Night's Vengeance aria, with its stratospheric high notes and furious coloratura. Papageno the birdcatcher's simple folk songs, Sarastro's hymns of wisdom and brotherhood, the solemn choruses of the priests, the lovers' trials by fire and water. It is a Singspiel, a German-language opera with spoken dialogue, not the high art of opera seria, not even the sophisticated comedy of opera buffa. This is popular theater, meant for ordinary people, for families, for those who cannot afford the court opera. The premiere takes place on September 30th, 1791, at Schikaneder's Theater on the outskirts of Vienna. Mozart conducts, Constanzi attends. Schikaneder plays Papageno, and the audience, ordinary Viennese citizens, loves it. The opera is performed again and again, night after night. It becomes a sensation. Mozart attends many performances. He sits in a box and watches the audience react. He is delighted when they laugh at the right moments, when they applaud the arias, when they leave the theater humming the tunes. But even as the magic flute triumphs, Mozart is failing. The symptoms begin subtly. A headache here, fatigue there, nothing alarming at first. But by mid-November, something is clearly wrong. His hands begin to swell, then his feet. The swelling spreads to his legs. His abdomen distends. His face puffs up. This is edema. the accumulation of fluid in the tissues, a sign that something fundamental in the body's systems has gone awry. The fever comes next, high and persistent, burning through him, making him sweat through his night clothes, making him shiver even when wrapped in blankets. His skin develops a rash, red and angry, spreading across his torso and limbs, and the pain, constant pain, in his joints, in his muscles, everywhere, as if his entire body is protesting, rebelling, breaking down. By November 20th, just 2 days after conducting the premiere of his Freemasons cantata, Mozart can no longer rise from bed. He lies in the apartment he shares with Constanze at number 9 Rauhensteingasse. The room is modest, the furniture simple, but there is a piano. Always a piano. Even now, even bedridden, Mozart keeps manuscript paper within reach. There is still the Requiem to finish, still the mysterious commission, still the work that haunts him. 2 doctors attend him, Thomas Franz Closet and Matthias von Salaba. They are respected physicians, trained in the medical practices of their time. They examine Mozart's swollen body. They listen to his labored breathing. They note the rash, the fever, the vomiting that comes in waves. They confer. They agree on a diagnosis: rheumatic fever. This is what doctors call a relapse. Mozart has suffered from rheumatic fever before, as a child, as a teenager, possibly 3 or 4 times in his life. Rheumatic fever is caused by a streptococcal infection, though the doctors of 1791 do not know this. They do not understand bacteria, do not understand how infections spread, do not understand the mechanism by which strep throat, so common and usually harmless, can sometimes trigger an autoimmune response that attacks the heart valves and joints. What the doctors do know is that rheumatic fever tends to return. Each attack damages the heart a little more, leaves scar tissue, weakens the valves, makes the next infection more dangerous. And this attack, this final attack, is severe. The doctors apply the standard treatments. They bleed Mozart. This is done by opening a vein and draining blood into a basin. The theory is that bad humors must be released, that the body's balance must be restored. In reality, bleeding weakens an already failing patient, removes the blood cells that carry oxygen, lowers blood pressure in someone whose cardiovascular system is already compromised. But the doctors do not know this. They are doing what generations of physicians have done, what Galen taught 1,500 years ago, what every medical textbook recommends. They apply cold compresses to Mozart's burning forehead. They give him medicines, tinctures and powders, compounds whose ingredients are secret, preparations that may contain mercury or antimony or other substances now known to be toxic. But again, the doctors are following the practices of their time, doing what they believe will help. Constanze sits with him, day after day, night after night. Her sister Sophie helps, brings food, changes linens, tries to keep Mozart comfortable. The apartment fills with the smell of sickness, sweat and medicine, and the chamber pot that must be constantly emptied. Mozart drifts in and out of lucidity. Sometimes he talks about the Requiem, hums passages he is trying to work out, gives instructions about how certain sections should be completed. Other times he imagines someone has poisoned him, becomes agitated, accuses unnamed enemies. Constanze tries to calm him, assures him it is merely the fever talking. But Mozart is not convinced. He feels his strength failing, feels death approaching, and in his fevered mind it seems impossible that this should happen naturally. Someone must have done this to him. Someone must want him dead. In late November, he rallies briefly. The fever subsides a little. The swelling diminishes slightly. He can sit up, can eat a little broth, can hold a pen. He works on the Requiem, trying to capture the music before it is too late. But his hand shakes, the notes on the page blur. He manages a few bars, a few passages, but nothing is finished. He invites friends to his bedside. Anton Schack, a singer from Schikaneder's theater. Franz Xaver Gerl, the bass who sang Sarastro in The Magic Flute. And Franz Xaver Süssmayr, the young composer who has been helping with copying and orchestration. They gather on December 4th, bring the manuscript of the Requiem, the pages that exist, the sections Mozart has completed, the Requiem Aeternum, the Kyrie, parts of the Dies Irae sequence. They sing. Mozart tries to sing the alto part. His voice is weak, thin, a ghost of what it was. He weeps as they sing. It is unbearably beautiful. The music he has written, the music that will outlive him, the music that seems to know it is a memorial. They get through the Lacrimosa, 7 bars of it. Then Mozart breaks down, cannot continue. The friends look at each other, not knowing what to say, not knowing if this is goodbye. That evening, December 4th, Mozart seems better, more alert. He talks to Constanze about practical matters, what she should do after he is gone, how she should manage the manuscripts, how she should petition the emperor for a pension. She protests. He will recover. This is just temporary. But Mozart shakes his head. He knows. The body knows when it is failing, when the end is near. Later that night, Sophie is called. Constanze is frightened. Mozart's condition has worsened suddenly. Sophie rushes to find Dr. Closet. He is at the theater, enjoying an evening of entertainment. When she finally locates him, he comes immediately. But when he arrives and examines Mozart, there is little he can do. Mozart is unconscious now. His breathing is labored, loud. Sophie will later describe it as sounding like drums, like Mozart is trying to sing the timpani part from the Requiem even in his dying. His face is flushed with fever. His body is failing, organ by organ, system by system. Constanze lies down beside him, holds him, prays, begs God for a miracle. But no miracle comes. At 5 minutes before 1 o'clock in the morning on December 5th, just as the date turns from Monday to Tuesday, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart takes his last breath. The room falls silent. The labored breathing stops. The fever breaks, and he is gone. Constanze is devastated. She lies down on the bed next to his body. She wants to die too, to catch whatever illness took him, to join him. Friends pull her away. There are arrangements to make, children to care for. Life continues, even when it seems impossible. The funeral is small. Vienna is under threat of bombardment. Travel is difficult. Only a handful of people attend the service at St. Stephen's Cathedral on December 7th. There is no music, no eulogy, simply a brief blessing. Then the body is taken to St. Mark's Cemetery on the outskirts of Vienna. He is buried in a common grave. This is standard practice for the middle class, not a sign of poverty or disrespect. Simply the way most people are laid to rest. Multiple bodies in a single grave, covered with earth, no individual marker. Later, much later, stories will circulate about a snowstorm, about mourners turning back, about Mozart buried alone in the cold. But these stories are exaggerations. The weather was mild. The burial was unremarkable, simply sad. The cause of death remains debated to this day. More than 100 diagnoses have been proposed. Rheumatic fever, streptococcal infection leading to kidney failure, trichinosis, mercury poisoning, subdural hematoma. Each theory has its supporters. Each theory has evidence. We will never know for certain, but we do know some things. Mozart was feeling relatively well in the months before his death. His letters show no signs of chronic illness. He was productive, working on multiple projects. The illness came suddenly, lasted only about 2 weeks, and killed him quickly. Vienna at that time was experiencing an epidemic. Many young men died in late 1791 with similar symptoms: swelling, fever, rash. This could suggest a bacterial infection, perhaps streptococcal, perhaps something else entirely. The rumor of poisoning started almost immediately. Within a week of Mozart's death, a Berlin newspaper reported that he had been poisoned. The primary suspect, in popular imagination, was Antonio Salieri, the Italian composer who held court positions that Mozart coveted, who had influence Mozart lacked, who supposedly resented Mozart's genius. But there is no evidence for this. Salieri and Mozart were not close friends, but they were professional colleagues. They attended each other's concerts. Salieri conducted Mozart's works. The rivalry between them has been exaggerated by myth, by Peter Schaffer's play Amadeus, by the film adaptation. These are fictions, compelling fictions, but fictions nonetheless. Mozart died of illness, sudden, cruel, but natural. One more life cut short by the primitive medicine of the 18th century. One more genius who died before his time, leaving us to wonder what he might have created if he had lived to 60, to 70, to 80. Constanze survives him by 51 years. She is 29 when Mozart dies, a widow with 2 small sons and crushing debts. The apartment is full of unpublished manuscripts, unfinished works, half-written scores. She could despair, could sink into poverty and obscurity. But Constanze is practical, resilient. She has managed Mozart's chaotic finances as well as anyone could. Now she will manage his legacy. She organizes memorial concerts, performs excerpts from Mozart's operas and sacred music. She publishes his works, sells manuscripts to reputable publishers, negotiates good prices, ensures that accurate editions reach the public. Emperor Leopold grants her a pension. As the widow of a court composer, it is not large, but it helps. Combined with the income from concerts and publications, Constanze gradually becomes financially secure. In 1809, she marries Georg Nikolaus von Nissen, a Danish diplomat, a man who admires Mozart's genius and wants to help preserve his memory. Together, they work on Mozart's biography, compiling letters, interviewing people who knew him, separating fact from legend. When Nissen dies in 1826, Constanze continues the work. She publishes the biography in 1828. It becomes one of the foundational documents of Mozart scholarship. Despite its Victorian propriety, despite its omissions, it preserves details that would otherwise be lost. Constanze lives to be 80 years old. She dies in Salzburg on March 26, 1842, more than half a century after Mozart, long enough to see his reputation secure, long enough to know that his music will never be forgotten. Their 2 surviving sons live full lives. Carl Thomas becomes an official in Milan. He never marries, has no children, but he lives to be 74, dies in 1858. Franz Xaver Wolfgang becomes a composer and teacher. He performs his father's works. He composes in his father's shadow. Nothing he writes achieves lasting fame. But he has a respectable career. He lives to be 53, dies in 1844. With Franz Xavier's death, Mozart's direct line ends. No grandchildren, no descendants carrying the name into the future. Just the music, just the legacy. And what a legacy it is. 893 works cataloged by Ludwig von Kuchel in the 1860s. Symphonies, concertos, chamber music, sonatas, masses, operas, serenades, divertimentos, works in every genre, music for every occasion. Some of it is routine, pieces written to order for specific events, functional music that served its purpose and might have been forgotten. But much of it, so much of it, transcends its circumstances. The late symphonies, the piano concertos, the string quintets, the operas, the Requiem left unfinished but completed by Süssmayr. These works are not just skillful, not just beautiful. They are necessary, part of the permanent treasury of human achievement. Joseph Haydn heard of Mozart's death while in London. He wept. He wrote to a friend, "I was quite beside myself for some time over his death, and could not believe that Providence should so quickly have called away an irreplaceable man into the other world." Haydn lived for another 18 years. He composed some of his greatest works in that time: the late symphonies, the Creation Oratorio, the Seasons. But he never forgot his friend. And in his own music, you can hear Mozart's influence, the warmth, the melodic richness, the refusal to settle for the merely adequate. Beethoven, who briefly studied with Mozart as a teenager in 1787, would later build on Mozart's foundation, would expand the symphony beyond what Mozart imagined, would push harmony and form into new territories. But Beethoven always acknowledged the debt. Mozart showed what was possible. Beethoven went further, but Mozart opened the door, and the legacy continues. Composers study Mozart's scores, seeking to understand how he achieved such perfection of form, how his melodies seem inevitable, how his harmonies surprise without jarring, how his counterpoint flows without sounding academic. Performers dedicate careers to Mozart. Singers work for years to master the Queen of the Night's aria. Pianists return again and again to the concertos. Orchestras program the symphonies. Chamber groups explore the quartets and quintets. And ordinary listeners, people who cannot read music, who know nothing of sonata form or modulation or counterpoint, they hear Mozart's melodies and recognize something universal, something that speaks directly to the heart, without mediation, without explanation, just beauty, just truth. The child who composed minuets at age 5, who wrote symphonies at 8, who conquered Europe before he reached 10. He became the man who revolutionized opera, who perfected the piano concerto, who showed that music could be both intellectually satisfying and emotionally moving, both formally perfect and humanly warm. Mozart lived only 35 years, but in those years, he created music that has lived for more than 2 centuries, music that will live as long as humans gather to listen, as long as we seek beauty, as long as we believe that art can lift us beyond the mundane and the temporary into something eternal. The boy from Getreidegasse, the miracle child, the restless genius, the devoted husband, the grieving father, the independent artist, the man who died too young. He left us the Requiem he could not finish, and 800 other works that stand complete, perfect, waiting to be discovered again by each new generation. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, born in winter, dead before he reached 40, but alive forever in every note he wrote, in every melody that bears his signature, in every moment when the music begins and we are transported, reminded that genius walks among us, that beauty is real, that art matters, that some souls burn so brightly they illuminate centuries. And so the story of Mozart drifts into silence, but his music continues. It fills concert halls in Vienna and Tokyo and New York. It plays in films and elevators and smartphone apps. It is studied in conservatories and hummed by children. It is inexhaustible, infinite, a gift that keeps giving. If you enjoyed this journey through Mozart's life, let yourself rest a little longer. There are more stories waiting, more composers, more music, more lives that shape the world through sound. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to the Sleeping Tones, and let the next story carry you gently toward dreams. Good night.